All right, let's dive into a story. It's both captivating and disturbing. We're going to uncover the truth. Behind Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a New Orleans socialite, very prominent, but harbored a very dark secret.
Yeah, known for her wealth, her charm,
Right.
but suspected of being a serial killer. Notorious for her horrific treatment of enslaved people in her household.
Exactly. We're going to dig into a biographical PDF about Delphine LaLaurie and examine the historical context of slavery in early 19th century New Orleans and try to separate the facts from the embellished folklore that surrounds her.
Yeah, this PDF is a great resource. It dives into those confirmed events, allows us to explore how the legend has evolved over time.
So let's start with Delphine's background. Born Marie Delphine McCarty on March 19, 1787 in New Orleans. Yeah. She came from a prominent Creole family.
Right.
And for those unfamiliar, Creole refers to descendants of European colonists, often French or Spanish, born in Louisiana.
And they were very influential. Her uncle, Esteban Rodriguez Miro, was the governor of Spanish Louisiana and Florida, and her cousin, Augustine de McCarty, was the mayor of New Orleans.
Wow.
So her family was woven into the fabric of power in the city.
It's incredible how connected they were. But, this privileged upbringing also meant Delphine grew up surrounded by the deeply ingrained institution of slavery, a system that really shaped the culture of New Orleans.
Yeah, and this was a particularly tense period. You had the Haitian Revolution unfolding, across the Caribbean with a successful slave uprising, and local slave revolts created a climate of fear among slaveholders.
Right.
They lived with this constant dread of rebellion.
And that fear is really palpable when you consider Delphine's own uncle was killed by his slaves years earlier.
Right.
Just imagine the impact that had on her family and their perception of enslaved people. It's a chilling reminder of the personal stakes involved.
It really underscores the historical context. This fear, right, it led to increasingly brutal and repressive measures to maintain control over enslaved populations.
Delphine navigated this world, marrying 3 times, widowed twice, but always maintaining her social standing. But despite those outward appearances, whispers of her cruelty towards enslaved people started to circulate.
Yeah, people noted that the enslaved individuals in her household appeared exceptionally haggard and wretched compared to others, almost like they carried the weight of something unspeakable.
It's haunting, isn't it? And it gets even more complicated, because even with these rumors, a lawyer was sent to investigate the LaLaurie household following public concern.
Right.
And he found no evidence of mistreatment.
It highlights the power dynamics at play. Imagine being an enslaved person trying to get justice against such a prominent figure like Delphine LaLaurie. The system was stacked against them.
There's also the story of Leah, a young enslaved girl who fell to her death from the roof of the LaLaurie mansion. The accounts vary, with some claiming she was trying to escape punishment, others that she was just trying to avoid Delphine's wrath.
Yeah, it's a tragedy shrouded in these conflicting narratives, right? The LaLauries claimed it was an accident, but the lack of clarity only fueled the public's suspicions.
It adds to this air of mystery and suspicion. That seems to permeate everything about Delphine LaLaurie. But then, on April 10th, 1834, a fire erupted in the LaLaurie mansion's kitchen.
Right.
And this seemingly everyday event, it would change everything.
Yeah, it became the catalyst that exposed Delphine LaLaurie's crimes to the world.
Rescuers arrived at the burning mansion to a horrifying scene. The 70-year-old cook was chained to the stove.
Oh.
She later admitted to setting the fire herself.
Wow, she was desperate.
Yeah.
This wasn't just an attempt to escape the fire, it was an act of suicide. The cook was terrified of being taken to the uppermost room, claiming that those who went there never returned.
Can you imagine the chills that must have run down everyone's spine at that moment?
Yeah.
People demanded the keys to the slave quarters, but the LaLauries refused. The rescuers, along with a growing crowd, they broke down the doors to a scene of unimaginable horror.
I mean, newspaper accounts describe the discovery of 7 people, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. They had been imprisoned in the attic for months, subjected to unimaginable torture.
Witnesses recounted finding a woman with an iron collar. Another so weak from a head wound she could barely walk. The descriptions from first-hand accounts paint a picture of sustained, methodical cruelty.
They found people who had been whipped, bound in agonizing positions, forced to wear spiked iron collars. This wasn't just a matter of mistreatment, it was sadistic torture. It reveals a disturbing truth about Delphine LaLaurie. She reveled in the suffering of others. This news, the atrocities, they didn't stay quiet for long. It ignited a firestorm, of outrage throughout New Orleans.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Right.
Think about it. This wasn't just a case of, mistreatment.
Right.
We're talking about torture
Absolutely.
on a horrific level.
Yeah, and thousands of people gathered at the jail where the surviving victims were taken. They wanted to see it themselves, to witness the proof of LaLaurie's cruelty firsthand.
It's hard to grasp that kind of public display,
Mm.
but it also reflects, the growing abolitionist movement of the time.
Right.
People becoming more aware of the horrors of slavery and demanding change.
Absolutely. This incident, this horrific incident, became a pivotal moment in the debate over slavery. It really rallied public opinion against the institution and those who defended it.
And then the mob, they turned their attention to the LaLaurie mansion.
Driven by fury, a thirst for justice, they stormed the house, destroying everything in their path, as reported by newspapers at the time.
It must have been pure chaos.
Oh, yeah.
This grand symbol of wealth and power brought down by the community's collective rage at what happened within its walls.
The sheriff and his officers tried to intervene.
Oh, wow.
But the mob's anger was too great. By the time they dispersed, the mansion was in ruins.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
Isn't it? The destruction of that opulent house, symbol of wealth and power brought down by the righteous anger of the people. Almost a form of poetic justice.
I agree.
Sadly, Delphine LaLaurie herself managed to evade the mob.
Yeah, she vanished during the chaos, escaped accountability for her crimes.
It adds another layer, doesn't it, to this already captivating story. It raises so many questions. How did she manage to flee? Where did she go? And did she ever truly grapple with the weight of her actions?
Well, some accounts suggest she fled New Orleans by coach, made her way to the waterfront, boarded a schooner bound for Mobile, Alabama, and eventually she found refuge in Paris.
So Paris became her sanctuary, a place to hide from the repercussions of her crimes.
Yeah, reportedly she lived there with her mother and 2 sisters, shielded from the scrutiny and judgment. That awaited her back in New Orleans.
But even in exile, her past couldn't be totally erased.
Right.
Her son, Paul Blanc, wrote a letter in 1842, mentioned Delphine was seriously contemplating a return to New Orleans.
It's interesting. Yeah. It offers a glimpse into her mindset. She seemingly believed that she had no reason to have fled in the first place. A startling display of denial.
Wow. But her children and relatives fiercely opposed her return.
Yeah.
They understood the gravity of her crimes.
Of course.
And the danger she would face if she ever set foot in New Orleans again.
Right.
So despite, this yearning for home, Delphine remained in Paris for the rest of her life, living in relative obscurity.
Right.
Even her death remained shrouded in mystery. We have conflicting accounts. No definitive answers.
Yeah, one popular but unsubstantiated story claims she died in a boar hunting accident. Another, based on a copper plate discovered in a New Orleans cemetery, suggests she died in Paris in 1842.
But French archives tell a different story. They record her death in Paris in 1849 at the age of 62.
So, which is it? Did she die in a hunting accident, as legends suggest, or did she live out her days in quiet exile, haunted by the specters of her victims?
The truth, like so much else in Delphine LaLaurie's life, continues to elude us. But there's another aspect of this tale we need to examine. The gruesome details of LaLaurie's torture that have become so ingrained in popular culture.
You're talking about the stories of victims with their limbs broken and reset at odd angles, their skin peeled off, their organs mutilated.
Exactly. While these vivid and horrific descriptions are widely known, they're not actually supported by those primary sources from 1834.
So it seems that as the LaLaurie legend was passed down, those details became increasingly exaggerated.
And authors like Jean Delavigne and Kalila Katharina Smith, who wrote about the LaLaurie story, in the mid to late 20th century, they added their own embellishments.
Yeah.
They created this picture of unimaginable cruelty, going far beyond what was documented at the time.
It's a fascinating example of how folklore can evolve.
Yeah.
How a real-life event can become intertwined with myth and exaggeration over time.
It also raises questions about how we interpret and remember history.
Right.
Especially when dealing with sensitive and emotionally charged subjects, like slavery and violence.
I agree.
The confirmed facts of Delphine LaLaurie's crimes are certainly horrifying enough.
Absolutely.
But it's important to approach the more sensationalized details with caution, right?
Of course.
Relying on credible sources and recognizing how stories can change over time is crucial.
Absolutely.
But even without those embellishments, the core of the LaLaurie story remains powerful
Oh, for sure.
and disturbing.
It serves as a reminder of the darkness that can reside within humanity, the capacity for cruelty that can exist even in seemingly civilized societies.
It also forces us to confront the legacy of slavery,
Right.
the brutal reality of a system that granted individuals like Delphine LaLaurie absolute power over the lives of others.
While her story unfolded over 200 years ago, the questions it raises about power, morality, and the lasting impact of historical trauma remain as relevant today as ever.
It's interesting, isn't it? Even though she was a real person who committed these heinous acts, she's almost become a mythical figure, a boogeyman of New Orleans history.
You're right. That's what makes her story so enduring. It taps into our fascination with the macabre, the dark underbelly of society. But it also serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the horrors that can unfold when power goes unchecked.
And let's not forget, the LaLaurie Mansion still stands in New Orleans.
Oh, right.
Well, the rebuilt one, that is.
Right.
It's a popular tourist destination, even rumored to be haunted.
Wow.
People are drawn to it, wanting to glimpse into that dark past.
It's become a tangible link to this chilling story, a place where history and folklore intersect. But it's crucial to remember the current LaLaurie Mansion is not the same structure where those atrocities took place.
Right.
It's a reconstruction, a reminder that history often exists in layers, with different versions and interpretations coexisting.
So what does this all mean for us today? Why does the LaLaurie story still captivate us after all these years? What does it say about us and our relationship to the past?
I think it speaks to the power of storytelling, how a single event can become a lens through which we explore these larger themes, like good versus evil, the corrupting nature of power, and the pursuit of justice.
The LaLaurie story reminds us that history isn't just dates and names in a textbook.
Right.
It's about real people, real lives, and the tangible consequences of human choices.
Absolutely. It challenges us to confront the darker chapters of our collective past and grapple with the enduring legacy of slavery. And its impact on our society today really makes you think, doesn't it, about how one story has become such a big part of New Orleans history.
Yeah, it's like, why are we so drawn to these darker aspects of history? The LaLaurie case, it's not just some, isolated incident, It reflects the deep inequalities, the harsh realities of slavery back then.
Right. Understanding the broader context, the social and political forces of that time, it's key to understanding the complexities of history and how it still resonates with our lives today.
Yeah, for sure.
This deep dive into Delphine LaLaurie's life, it's been fascinating, hasn't it? I mean, we've uncovered the facts about her horrific crimes and how truth can get all mixed up with these folklores over time. And it's a story that continues to captivate us and disturb us, even centuries later.
Absolutely. So many layers to this story. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway?
I think the enduring legacy of slavery, the LaLaurie case, is like a stark reminder of a system that just allowed for unimaginable cruelty and abuse of power. It forces us to examine how this history still shapes our society today.
It really does. And for anyone listening who wants to delve deeper, what would you suggest?
I'd suggest exploring those primary sources, like newspaper accounts from that time, gives you a more nuanced understanding of the events and the public reaction. And of course, a visit to the LaLaurie Mansion, although rebuilt, it's in New Orleans. It offers a tangible connection to this dark chapter.
Yeah, it's a reminder that, these stories, however disturbing they happen to real people, it's history we can't afford to forget.
I agree. As you continue to learn about Delphine LaLaurie, her crimes, I want to leave you with a question. How does this story shape our understanding of New Orleans and its complex, often contradictory history?
That's a good question. This deep dive has given us all a lot to think about, and it's just the beginning. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.